we've been having some conversations with different consultants and with Five9, and we wanted to present a webinar focused on the contact center and the requirements therein. So that's the conversation we're going to have today. On this call, we have Richard Myers, who's a solutions consultant from Five9. He's going to run most of this presentation and he's going to do a demonstration for you as we get through the conversation. But first of all, who's Vertical? Most of you guys are part of our consultant collaboration program, but Vertical Communications is the nation's leading voice communications vendor with a specialization in UCaaS, CCaaS, and SD-WAN. We've been doing this. We've been in this business for a long time. We've been in the phone business for a long time. We started out doing on-premise phone systems with Mitel and our own vertical wave lines. We still do those lines, but we've also made the transition to unified communications as a service, contact center as a service, and we do SD-WAN solutions as well. All right, Mr. Myers, you can take over from here if you'd like.
Okay, so just about cover a few topics today. From my experience, Eric asked me to jump in here and talk about how we do it at Five9, and from my experience as a solution consultant, I've become the SME at our company this past year as we roll this out, and some of the the challenges and questions that we get that sort of help from a consulting standpoint. So today we'll just cover a little bit who's Five9, about the E-911, which I think everyone's familiar with. Some of the use cases, again, the product that we're offering here is, customer driven. So there's opportunity for consultants to, help out. And then a look inside the product. We'll do a demo and then some questions. So with that next slide. So those who don't know about Five9, we're a global CCaaS provider, and been in business for a bunch of years here. And these are just our talking points here in the slide here. I won't spend a lot of time on this, but again, we're the leader in the CCaaS environment space, a public company, with over 200,000 seats in the industry. And you can see some of our contacts on the right side there. So, but again, just about our business is growing. We're the leader in the industry, offering now as part of this 911 service. So next slide. And again, just a little about our numbers here. Why you'd want to partner and work and offer Five9 is that we're continued to grow. We have strong growth year over year with our products, with our sales, with our commitment to our partners to help drive business and solutions, to help sell and install and make our everyone successful going forward. So I think that's enough of the sales pitch. Next slide. Yeah, well, obvious. I'm the technical person. So about Kerry's Law. So this is how we got involved in here. This is where Five9 has been driven by the FCC to be able to provide 911 capability for two FCC requirements, Kerry's Law and Ray-Bounds Act, and they're both a little bit different. Kerry's Law, if you've never you ever gone to a hotel and dialed 911, or from when you have a friending PBXs, sometimes they have they would have you dial a code to get the line before you could dial 911. So here with the new regulations, you can't have any prefixes. You just need the ability to dial 911 from any phone in the call center or within a PBX type of environment. The second piece is the Ray-Bounds Act, and that's being able to, you could dial 911, the PSAP, Public Safety Answering Point, to receive those calls. But now the next challenge is in a office building, right, locating that caller. And with Ray-Bounds Act, that helps provide some additional information when that call is placed to identify where that caller is calling from within the facilities. So what they call it is, being able to provide a dispatchable location within that location facilities. And that applies here as we go forward into our CCaaS environment, where those agents are working from, whether they're working from home, the office, some type of blended environment, are they on the road? So we needed a solution to be able to fit our customer base. Next slide. So this is where we looked at what requirements that we need to offer here as part of Five9. before we pick the partner or vendor going forward. So we looked at being able to dial 911 right from our application, our desktop web application here for the agents, being able to provide some type of notification that a 911 call has been placed, being able to route those calls to the PSAP over the back end trunking, being able to allow the administrators to easily manage and provision the system, and then providing some alerts, notifications, as well as call recording capability in the system. So these are some of the use cases that we had identified that our customers would at least, as minimum required to meet before we'd offer a solution. And again, this, being able to provide this solution brings us in compliance with those FCC regulations. So this is next slide. Actually, two. You can skip over. There. Yep. So being able to provide the solution. So once we've identified the solution, right, it's understanding. So these are some of the challenges that we go forward with. Asking customers our discovery questions. So again, who are some of the stakeholders? Again, it's always been a challenge trying to drive a product, new process in a customer environment. So identifying who the stakeholders are, who needs to be involved in this process as they want to roll out 911, where the agents are located. And we'll cover a bunch of this later on in the slides here, and definitely during the demo here, because this is one of the big challenges areas here is that, where the agents are working from. In our CCAS environment with COVID, everyone is now, working remotely, working in an office or some type of blended, some in the office, some at home. So, it presents some challenges being able to track when those agents move from location to make sure the is updated as often as possible so we know where they're calling from. And again, if they're in a building, right, if they're, maybe they're, always now go back into their corporate offices, being mandated to be in the building, do they move around in the building? How often do they move around a building? Are they carrying their laptops or using phones to place calls from? So it's just being able to identify the routines where they're moving in the building, right? So if you have a, sometimes it's not an issue, right? If you're in a, small building, small office complex, but if you're in a multi-story building, multi-campus, right, and you're moving around across the campus into another building, your location has completely changed. So then how do you track those movements to be able to provide that accurate information? Security office. Again, this is related to, who needs to be notified when a 911 call is placed and how do they respond? So, some of the larger organizations have a security front desk, security office, security at the gate. They'll let people on the campus, making sure that they're notified that there has been a 911 call placed from their environment, so they could dispatch themselves to open gates, open doors as necessary as police, fire agents show up on site. IT network resources. Again, this is sort of related to movement in a building, right? How are laptops and your desktops configured to being able to utilize the 5.9 app as well as the 911 app, which I'll show in a little bit here. But sometimes you need to, depending on which route you go down to the products, you need the IT resources to help deploy the application on your laptops or desktops. Again, sort of related to the security question, right? Who else needs to be notified? So if the security office gets notified, but you also want to notify your supervisor or administrators in your building there. So sometimes the agents, we've run into this where they, everyone is working from home. You don't get to see them in the office, so you want to, if something happens, right, you want that notification to go to your supervisors, so they know that something happened. Who maintains the data? So this is a challenge that we've run into, right? So you have these agents working at home. They have different contact information. You have your corporate email address. They have phone numbers, the ID number. So again, who has a central repository of all the information that is needed to populate the system initially? And then the last one is just a network inventory. So it's sort of, these are sort of related back to the building ones. If you plug your laptop into the building, you could detect the location of that laptop based upon a network switch, but do they have an inventory of where those network switches are deployed within the facilities themselves? or do they need to create a project to go and map everything? Next slide. So with all that said, this is how 5.9 is, we've executed this today. So we've partnered with the Red Sky or Everbridge company now to be able to provide our back-end 911 services. And so what happens is, starting at 1 here, our agents log into our 5.9 application. The agents, have a utility that they can set their location. So then if they now have to dial 911 from within our 5.9 application, it gets routed out. We hand off to Red Sky, number 3 here. Red Sky is basically going to do a lookup, a database tip to see where this agent was located and route to the appropriate PSAP across the country. So whether the agent's working at home or working in an office, if they've done the step 1, they've updated the location, it'll route to the appropriate PSAP. Whereby they can then notify the proper authorities and dispatch as necessary. The challenge that it comes into, there's a couple of roadblocks that we've run into why we've been seeing this in the field here. So the first one is getting the agents and getting the processes in place in these organizations to update that database. It's a challenge for them to take ownership and map it out and drive it through to make sure everything updates that database. But in the event that something doesn't happen here, in the event that they don't update the database, it will still go out, but it goes out to what's called the ECRC, Emergency Contact Relay Center, which is and basically it's a national 911 call center that will triage the calls, find out where they're calling from, and then dispatch the proper authorities. So that's one of the challenges, making sure they update it. And the second challenge is having a callback number, because not everyone is all willingly wants to give out a callback number. And those, vary. Sometimes they have DID numbers, landline numbers. Actually, the next slide here. So again, it's being able to capture that data. So this is sort of the agent requirements. What we need here to get started with them to help deploy this system. So starting with an agent audit. So we have all these within our system itself. We have all these agents that they get added over the years. Maybe they left, maybe they didn't delete their credentials or not. But it's important to start with a clean database of who your agents, who needs to be mapped into the 911 system. So some of the minimum requirements we have here is the first name, last name, the email address, and then this callback number. And that callback number is, again, as I said, it's been challenging in a lot of places because not everyone wants to give out their personal mobile phone number as the callback number. So then what other options are available to them? What else can you do? They may have a DID number associated with that CCAS environment, kind of a landline, or in some cases we've seen them now just utilize their security office or a number in a building that's someone's staff there to receive those callback numbers. So let me just pause there, see if there are any questions at this point.
I don't see any, but one thing I did want to highlight as far as this goes is 5.9 can be used as an over-the-top contact center where they don't provide their own telephony. Their 911 support is assuming that they are also providing the underlying carrier here. So when we're talking about Red Sky, it's assuming that they're providing the carrier. If you're using a different UCAS solution or physical phone solution underneath, where 5.9 is using somebody else's telephony services, those guys would have to provide this service, the 911 service for the clients. So just keep that in mind, guys. So.
Thanks, Eric. Yeah, so there definitely environments that they run the 911 calls through Red Sky, or they may use some of the back end, some of the legacy PBXs, or using other UCAS providers may run their other 911 through a different provider. But it has the flexibility to do that. So this is strictly running the calls through 5.9 out to Red Sky and beyond. But these are some of the challenges that we run into. They're trying to help drive adoption of the products out there. It's taking a lot longer to get the customers to gather this information because we're providing them the tools to implement this. 5.9 does not deploy. We set the initial configuration up, but we don't help customers configure it. It's on the customer to set up and deploy this themselves in their own environment. So we just provide some guidance to go forward and what they need to fill out the system. Next slide. So as I mentioned, there are a couple of challenges, right? So whether they're when you decide you do discovery with the customer, where the agents are working from, and that sort of then pushes us down these two passive applications that we have here provided by Red Sky. If an agent is working from home and they're strictly working from home and they don't change, then we usually go with this light or web-based client. So it's a simple web client. They log into the browser, and they're able to set their own locations. And if it doesn't change, they don't have to log into it again unless they change locations. The more complex version of this now is, again, you could use this also, right? So you could use this, right? If they work at home and they go to the office, they would have to still come to the web browser and then update and change their location. So it's being for the agent to be proactive here to update and change their locations. The next version of this is their desktop client app, and this is you get involved with the IT services to be able to push this application out. So it has a couple of pieces to it. So the first piece is if you load that application, it sort of will provide you a reminder if your network changes or if your environment changes. It's going to provide you a notification on your screen that, are you still in the same location? And if not, you could come back in again to the portal and then change it. The second piece, a bit more complicated, is what's called the network discovery. And that allows, I'll cover that a little deeper in a second here, but basically it's if you plug your laptop in to a network in a office environment, those network switches can be mapped, will automatically update the location for the agent. So the agent doesn't have to remember to change those locations. This is, so this is where we spend a lot of time up front with the customer trying to determine, how often they're moving, what's the, how much training is going to be involved for the agents to, being able to manage their own location, or do they want to set this up for IT to build it out so it's automatically populating. Next slide. So again, this is an example of what that agent experience looks like. It's pretty simple. It's pretty straightforward. They come in, they set up a name of the location, their address, and then the location information below it. That's the Raybounds app part of providing that dispatchable location. So on the right, so you see this is his personal location. Again, he's probably working at Starbucks for a few hours to get their internet access. Provides a location and the location in the building, that ground floor. And that's the information that's sent out to the 911 call centers. Next is another example of where we run into challenges, right? Naming convention, something simple as this, right? So they can be consistent throughout their organization. How do they label things? Some of the larger organizations, each department, each campus may have a little separate type of naming convention. So it's important for them to adopt some kind of standardized naming convention to be able to set up and maintain and build those processes in place to go forward with the system. Next. So this is, again, that second piece with the desktop client, and this is the back end of this, is using what's called that network discovery. And this is, again, as I mentioned, if you have your laptop, imagine you're at home, you go to the office, you plug your laptop in, you connect to the network. Do they want to have it automatically update the location? And there are a couple of ways, these are the 4 methods that are available in the product today to help, build that out for them. Some of the simplest being is this BBSID, which is basically a Wi-Fi access point. So if they were to build out in the product a location of the Wi-Fi access points, when you connect to it, it'll update the location for you automatically. Some of the other ones is that layer 3, using the IP endpoint, IP address of those machines, to being able to update the location. But again, all this is heavily dependent on their IT staff to be able to you manage the resources, track down the resources, identify the locations, and put some again the process in place if things change, if the IP changes, or what happens if that access point breaks down and they change it. So they need to. So it is a bit more IT extensive here, security extensive, being able to manage this type of system going forward. Next, again, this is again just a little example, a screenshot there. Go to the next one. So this is again, once you have all your data, you figure all this out. There are templates that are available in the tool to import the data. So it's whether you want to build out your agents, you have a sample, a CSV file with the information, the first name, last name, email address, their callback number. It can be bulk imported into the system, and then just manage these CSV files going forward. So whether it's the agents, a listing of the building, a listing of all the MAC addresses and IP ranges, so these could all be manually imported into the system. To help simplify the process. But if not, you're able to manually do them one at a time into the portal itself. Again, that sometimes that can be time consuming, but some of the smaller organizations, maybe 5, 10, 20 agents, it's probably a toss up whether they just manage it in the tool. It's not, but some of the larger ones, they definitely want to manage those spreadsheets and the data to have that accurate information to import it into the product itself. Notification. So again, this is the other piece, right? Who gets notified, how they should be notified. So there are a couple of pieces here to discuss up front. So it's the first one, everyone, they give you the email address of individual email addresses, but then what happens in 6 months, a year, that person's no longer there. So it's trying to get them to create that distribution list and let them manage that distribution list for those notifications. They also receive a SMS. So you can receive a text message. So again, this is like a security agent who's roaming the campus, making rounds. They can receive the notification on their device. And there's also, again, if they're a security center, they can have a desktop screen pop up with that location of that 911 call. So again, as Five9 goes through this, we are providing the tools for the customers, and it's just this is just how they get started into the product itself. But we provide them the tools to go in here, get them the access to the tool, and it's on them to go ahead and set this up, configure it, and then go forward with the testing of it. Next, so there's a dashboard once they go into the product itself, and that shows you the configuration, right? As you're bringing on agents, you want to make sure all your agents are configured in the system here, and that everyone has an address. So there's definitely a bunch of information in here that's available to be able to report out. So again, in this scenario here, we have 22 administrators in the system. There are 20 users. But what I want to point out here is that tracking. So you have 20 users that are set up, 20 agents. But in that recent issue, you have that my E-911 users without a location. In this case, there are 2 of them that have not set their location. So if they call 911, it's going to be a slow response, but they're not going to know where they're calling from. And they need to then goes out to the ECRC, who then has to track down where they're calling from and route to the appropriate PSAP. So it's a bit time consuming. So this is, again, the portal here helping the team here identify those agents and make sure they follow up with them and fill in the location properly. And then the last piece is as you go through the process here is just test. You got to make sure they test these calls. So there's a test number that's available called 933 that they could place that will do a sort of internal testing first. That's your sort of your first level smoke test. And it provides just basically when you call 933, it's going to play the record back, validate that you have a record in the database, and it's going to play back your address and your dispatchable location information. The second step is really just to do the live testing, actually call 911, right? And depending on the counties, it's probably good practice to reach out to the call center, the 911 call center where they're testing from. Just let them know or ask them if it's okay if we can place a bunch of test calls. They usually, in most cases, they're okay doing that off hours. Definitely, not during peak rush hours in the morning and evenings and lunchtime, but usually off hours. They're usually good with allowing some testing to come through. But just as a courtesy, you could call in there and just give them a heads up and see if they have any, if there's some other event it's taking their time, they won't be able to respond. But you do an end-to-end test and you just make sure that what information that you expect to have in your location and Raybounds Act, the dispatchable location, pops up on their screens. And with that, before I get into the demo, any questions? This is the tool that gets enabled to allow them to manage the system. So again, 5.9, we don't provide the configuration, we just provide access to that, and then the customers come in here and set it up themselves. So you can just, as I was showing you before, some of just a quick configuration aspects of this. So the users get configured in the system. You add the user into the system, first name, last name, the web functionality, the callback number, and email address goes into the product itself. It generates email out to those individuals. The individuals receive the email, they log on, they click on the link, and you can see here, this is sort of how you identify who set the system up. So again, there's gray here, so there's definitely color coding, and red. So gray is they were set up in here, but they never logged on to the system, and then the red is they logged on, but they did not set their location. And these are the couple that you want to identify, track down. It's part of the process to force them to put the location into the product itself. But from the agent perspective, this is what they usually go. So the agents will have this access here, where they have the locations. They're able to set their personal locations, come in and manage. Again, if they're moving around from home, or if I go to a Starbucks for lunch, I want to take some calls there or something. On the system, I have my address, but you could have, basically unlimited number of addresses in here if they move around, or just the agents could just come in here and selectively pick and choose where they're working from. If they were going into a corporate location, right, you have all the corporate locations built out. If I go to our corporate office in San Ramon next week, I could come in here, select the address, and boom, off it goes. This is what now would be sent out. Specifically, that floor and room that I'll be working in, or the cube number that I'm working from. So again, this is the simple, the basic web version that's requiring the agents to do the work. Flipping back over to the administration is that network discovery piece, and this is where it gets challenging for them to come in here and add those locations. So these are different access points, Wi-Fi hotspots. To be able to manage this. So if my laptop were to connect to this access point, it'll update the location for me automatically. You have the ability in here to again set up different ones, whether the MAC address or IP ranges in the system here. So again, if the MAC address, if it finds this MAC address, it's going to map it to this location for you. So again, a lot of discussion around the customers up front, how they want to do it. Implement this. The notification piece, you have the alerts and email configurations. You can build out those distribution lists here. So again, on a 911 call, this is a template that gets used here. Let me show you the template. Where's that template? Here it is. Okay. So here's a sort of a preview of the message that would go out. Again, this is where they get involved in customizing and tailoring that messages, because these are just the internal messages to the internal staff who receive these notifications. So once you sort of get through the process, you get the agents in the system, you determine the callback number, how they're being routed to that. If they're using the network discovery in the system, you configure the alerts in the system, and then you're able to now to come in here and test the system. So this is our 5.9 agent application, and you build out the 933 test number. And let's see, it should go through here, so you should be able to hear this.
You have reached the 933 location service. Please validate the following telephone number and location. If it is not correct, please contact your telephone system administrator. Your phone number is 914-473-4843. Your location is 3001 Bishop Drive, San Ramon, California 94583, floor 1, suite 110A. This message will repeat after a short pause. You have reached the 933.
Yes, that's, you sort of end there, setting up and testing and validating that the information is in the system correctly. You have your address, you have your dispatchable location. And let me see if there are any other questions.
Yeah, I don't see him.
Okay, yeah, so that's definitely what we go through. So from a consulting standpoint, there are definitely the challenges and opportunities there to engage with customers to help drive the adoption of these products. They don't have the staff and resources sometimes, or the expertise to drill in and figure out who the agents are, where they're working from, put those policies in place, manage the network IT infrastructure and the alerts, and then build those processes going forward. So then every time new agents are onboarded, that they're adopted and brought into the system itself here. All right. I think that's
yeah. And just for everybody else's information, I know that Five9 drives this solution as a customer-driven opportunity where they give them the technology, help them get set up and logged in, but the user then, or the client, in your case as a consultant, is then required to do the configuration on their own. But I will also tell you that as part of our reseller agreement with Five9, Vertical can help you do that configuration. So that'll help you identify, troubleshoot, work through the kinks. We're not going to go through and inventory all your users, but we can help get them into the system, help you get them configured and set up properly, help you do the naming convention. Some of that, from a consultant point of view, you guys are going to want to do with your clients on your own, but we can help you implement it in the technology side where you do the best practice and we do the execution for you. So there's some options there from that point of view. But other than that, if there aren't any questions, is there anybody on that has any of the consultants, any of the other people that are on that have any questions about this solution? Awesome. Well, I do thank you guys so much. Rich, do you have any closing comments?
No, I mean, again, we're happy to help out here when necessary. So please engage our team here if you need more discussions with clients or other questions. We're definitely happy to help out, get you going on this product or our solutions if you have any other questions.
Yeah, and feel free to reach out to me or Richard if you have any. Like you said, if you have any questions, we'll get that assigned or whatever. And I do want to say that I appreciate you guys spending 40 minutes with us, and I'll give you back 20 minutes of your time. And thank you so much for joining.